My name is Jeff Farbman from the Wallace Center at Winrock International. Welcome to the National Good Food Network webinar, Systemic Change, How Formalizing Processes Increases Efficiency, Reduces Risk, and Increases Organization Sophistication. Systems thinking is a bit like taking the red pill in the Matrix. Once you're exposed to it and understand its power, it becomes clear all the ways in which systematizing is extremely valuable. You'll see that not all systems need to be written down or very formal, but looking at your business from a systems perspective and writing down those procedures that should be written tends to give your employees and the business itself an increased level of sophistication and confidence. So welcome. The Wallace Center, a business unit of Winrock International, is the host of the NGFN webinar series. The Wallace Center has been a leading organization in the movement for a more sustainable and equitable food system for over 30 years. Today, the center supports entrepreneurs and communities as they build a new 21st century food system that is healthier for people, the environment, and the economy. The center serves the growing community of civic, business, and philanthropic organizations involved in building a new good food system in the United States. In particular, we're focused on advancing regional collaborative efforts around the country to move good food, healthy, green, fair, affordable food beyond the direct marketing realm into the larger scale wholesale channels. The National Good Food Network, or NGFN, is an initiative of the Wallace Center. It is structured as a network of networks, ensuring a sufficient flow of information and innovation from boots on the ground projects to the national level and back down to the grassroots level across the nation. The Wallace Center coordinates and supports the network. Our goals are to work with the growers to ensure that there is an abundant supply of good food to meet the high consumer demand for the product, to collect and disseminate the best models, stories, methods, and outcomes, and to ensure that policymakers are informed about the wonderful successes our network and partners have had so that we can continue to increase support for regional healthy food. You can learn more about the great work of the National Good Food Network on our website, ngfn.org. So today our presentation begins with an introduction to systems, processes, and standard operating procedures. With that background, we'll dive into two different, but as you'll see, related examples of food hubs who have embraced systems in different parts of their business. I'm sure you'll hear echoes of the ideas that our first panelist presents in the case studies. Finally, we've reserved a good chunk of time for your questions. And remember, type them in as you think of them. So now let me introduce our guide through the world of systems thinking. Phil Britton worked for 6 years in quality systems in the medical device industry and currently works for Cherry Capital Foods, implementing a collective food safety system called GroupGap. Phil was involved in the 2014 implementation pilot of GroupGap by the Upper Peninsula Food Exchange and provides similar assistance to other groups across the country. Phil, a Youper, lives with his family in Marquette, Michigan. Phil?
Thanks, Jeff. So yeah, I just wanted to start by just setting the stage and laying some of the groundwork before we get to the case examples. So when we're talking about systemic change, and kind of that systems thinking, that red pill thinking that Jeff was talking about, we're going to talk about what a systems approach is. What does it mean when we say we're going to take a systems approach type of thinking towards something? Some reasons why you'd want to do it. A few notes on how you could do it, and ultimately I just want to leave you with a mixed bag of nuts and bolts and tools that you can take back to your operation and hopefully realize some efficiencies and improvements. So so when we're talking about systematizing or taking a systems approach, what do we mean? Well, one of the core components of a system is a process, right? And I define a process as any activity that generates an outcome. So you do an activity, you pack a box, you pack a pallet, and then you have your outcome. Just one simple thing. And when you look at how all of these processes are interrelated, how they feed into each other, how they relate to each other, and the way that they flow together, that is what I define as a system. And so every operation, every business has these. So the system is more of like a higher level, outcome or objective, where a process is more focused in and just boots on the ground type of view of things. So when I talk about taking a systems approach, I mean taking like an intentional defining of these components and the relationships that define them. So yeah, so why would you want to take a systems approach to doing something? Obviously, one of the main reasons would be if you're trying to achieve a third-party certification, whether through GAP or GIP, through some other food safety certification, through some kind of other standard like an organic certification. One of the core pieces of those certifications is that you have to go through and proceduralize and define out what these systems are, what these processes are, and provide evidence that you're doing what you said you were going to do with them. Some of the other reasons why you might undertake this process would be, you know, like to reduce some risk, business or otherwise. So say you sit down and you say, these are my processes, here's how they relate in the system, and after doing that, you realize that, okay, I'm going to process this customer order, and in that process, it goes through 3 different people, which could increase the risk of info getting garbled along the way and could increase customer unsatisfaction. But now that you've done that, went through that process, now that you've looked at everything, you can adjust. Another piece of that could be, you know, if you go to a lender, what does every lender want to see? They want to see a business plan. They want to see that you've taken a thorough evaluation of your processes and systems. So that's one thing. Another one could be job role succession. I think we'll hear a little bit more about that later. But if someday on your way to work you get hit by a truck and you have to spend 6 weeks out of the office, or what if 2 of your key people move on, or they just go on an extended vacation? You know, we've all had the experience of asking ourselves, wait a minute, what did they do? How did they do their job again? So if you define out these things and if you document them, you're going to have a higher level of continuity between these different roles and a much smoother transition if you have to move people in and out or plug people in and out of those roles. One driver of the decision to actually like go through and document things could be practicality. That would play a part in how extensive you might want to go in defining things out, to what level you might want to document your systems, and also the scope of your approach. Am I going to systematize and take a systems approach to my entire business, or just this one aspect of it, or a couple different aspects of it? You know, how much time do I have to actually do this, and is it worth it? And once I do that, should I actually go through and develop standard operating procedures from a practical side of things? And then also just from the standpoint of business effectiveness, could also influence whether or not you wanted to take a systems approach, because once you lay everything out, you can see maybe some areas of waste in your business, or some duplication of efforts, or some opportunities to increase efficiencies. One example could be if you're looking at a certain process and you realize that your workers are having to walk on the clear other side of the warehouse to get cardboard boxes to pack orders. Maybe if you move that shelf of cardboard boxes to a more central location, you could reduce some time for people to walk across the warehouse. So by taking that systems approach and laying everything out like that, you could actually improve things, make things a little more efficient. So jumping off of the practicality and the efficiency bullet points. So when should you write it down? That's a question that comes up. You know, should you always write everything down, or does it not really matter that much? So I laid out 4 questions here, and they're by no means exhaustive, but these can kind of serve as a bit of a decision tree, per se. If you're asking yourself that question, should I write this down? Should I actually go through and develop an SOP or not? The first one is the obvious one: am I required to? Am I, like I said, going after a third-party certification, and do I have no choice? The second one would be, is the risk high if I don't? So think back to that job role succession point. You know, if this person has a mission critical task and it's not written down, and all of a sudden that person isn't there one day, does that really throw a monkey wrench in the works? Or if it's written down, will that make things more smooth? Or another thing from the standpoint of risk could be to reduce some liability. You know, I think of maybe some safety procedures, things like that. Other part, once trained, is it easy to remember and repeat? If this process is a pretty straightforward, you do it every day, it really doesn't change, it's pretty hard to screw up, you might need to write it down. But if it's a more complex task, or if it's a more complex process that is pretty critical and it fits in just a certain way, and you don't do it every day, you do it maybe once or twice a year, then it might be more beneficial to write that down and document it out in a procedure or something else like that. And then finally, will it benefit the business in terms of efficiency, consistency, quality, and so on? From an efficiency standpoint, it could reduce the thinking it through aspect. You know, you don't have to look at what you did the last time or reinvent the wheel every time you go to do this process or this task. It's already laid out, and you just reference that and you go from there. Or from a consistency standpoint, if you have 3 people that do the same job, but each person does it a little bit differently, kind of does it their own way, if you document it out and write it out in a procedure, it could increase that consistency between whoever's doing the job. Or from a quality standpoint, if you have specific customer requirements that might not be communicated down just the verbal chain, it might be better to have that documented in some kind of procedure, saying this person wants, a pallet of apples packed a certain way, or certain quantities on certain days, that kind of thing. Having those documented out makes it a lot easier to meet those customer requirements and achieve that quality that you're after. So I want to talk a little bit too, just a few, again, by no means exhaustive, but just again, a few nuts and bolts on writing SOPs. So, normally when you think an SOP stands for Standard Operating Procedure, which is basically just a document providing instructions on how to perform an activity. When I normally think of them, I think of like a Word document or something like that, but it could be any format. It could be a poster, it could be a video, it could be a web page, it could be a whole gamut of things. But when I think about a Standard Operating Procedure, the 3 main things that I think it should communicate, just from an organizational standpoint, would be the purpose, the scope, and the responsibility. The purpose would be the desired outcome, the why. Why does this document exist? What is it after? What are you hoping to achieve with this procedure? Those type of statements. The scope, which defines the boundaries of the procedure, like how far does this procedure reach? We've all heard of the term scope creep, when the scope isn't fully defined and it kind of just starts bleeding into other areas, but those nice defined borders are really helpful. And then also the responsibility, and not just responsibility for who has to follow the procedure, but who's also responsible for maintaining it. So those are 3, this common normal sections or pieces. Again, if it's a video or if it's a web page or a poster, it doesn't have to have bulleted sections. It could just be things that are communicated by the procedure. Other things that are helpful could be a revision history. It's nice to be able to look back at times and see, okay, who changed it, when they changed it, why they changed it. Sometimes that information isn't necessary, but sometimes it is helpful, especially if it's a year later and you're looking back and thinking, why did we change this again? And then also maybe some reference documents if there are other relevant documents in the system that this process is a component of. It might be helpful to have those readily available to reference as it's going through. And then also the role of templates. You can find SOP templates for any industry in a myriad of places, and I think they're a great tool. that can really help you pull out some of that language that you might be looking for, especially if it's not familiar with it, especially if you're not familiar with it. But really the value of taking a systems approach and systematizing things is going through the development process, actually sitting down, taking the time to think through each step, think through each component, think through how everything fits together. The value really is in going through that process and not just getting to the end. The end product is kind of like inferior to the actual process of going through it. So for an example, I was trying to think through, what would be a good business neutral example that everyone could relate to. Well, everyone has a morning routine. And so I figured I would talk about this guy named Bob who decided to take a systems approach to his morning routine. So obviously he writes everything down that he does in the morning before he leaves for work. He gets out of bed, lets the dog out, he takes the red pill, he, gets dressed, gets ready for the day, makes a cup of coffee, eats breakfast, he has other medication he has to take with food, and then he's out the door by 7:45 a.m. So now that he has all this out, he's looking at this saying, okay, is there some things I should document? Are there things that I could change to make my morning more efficient and more smooth? So say that he is going on vacation or he's dog sitting, maybe he should have a dog sitting standard operating procedure that says, okay, well, my dog likes this, he's good without a leash, he likes to do this when he goes outside, things like that. For getting ready for the day, maybe he could, if he lays his clothes out the night before, it reduces that time and that mental energy of having to decide what he wants to wear for the day, so he could realize some efficiencies there. With the two types of medication, one he takes without food, one with food, there is a higher risk of doing it wrong. If he takes them out of order or takes them in a way he's not supposed to, there could be some adverse consequences there. So maybe he should have some kind of tool, whether it's even if it's a pill box or just a note to himself, some type of documentation that would remind him that to take things this way. Or maybe he changes his diet with his breakfast to try to maybe reduce some of the medication that he has to take. So, just by defining out a system and going through that process of thinking through each process, he can already just begin to adjust and improve and modify his morning routine and start to make things a little more efficient and consistent and take some of the mental stress and energy out of his morning. So just a few more nuts and bolts, final takeaways. These are mostly regarding the documentation side of things, because that's really the bulk of systematizing when you talk about it. Personally, I'm a minimalist when it comes to documentation. I always try to go for quality over quantity, not avoiding documentation for documentation's sake, making sure that the documentation that you have is robust and simple and easy to understand. It's hard sometimes to wade through a very wordy procedure. It should also be available at point of use. That's a big one, especially if you're coming from the ISO standpoint, that whoever needs to have this documentation, this procedure, even if it's written or if it's just verbal, they should have it readily available so that they can use it where they're using it. You don't have to go somewhere for it. And also the people who are responsible for following it should be involved in the development. And then from a format standpoint, there's, like I mentioned, it could take a whole bunch of different formats. You think of Microsoft Word, you could think of a hard copy binder, you could think of Google Docs. I personally developed a quality management system for our group gap program on a wiki. So there's a wide range of things you could use. The one thing I would say is just try to avoid duplication, like keeping things in both hard copy and electronic format, especially when it comes to maybe records. Obviously, if you're going to have a hard copy of a procedure, you need an electronic one you can edit. But just trying to avoid that duplication of of effort and just use whatever works for you. And then also keep it dynamic. It should be easy to update, easy to adjust. It should never be a thing that you set in stone and that's just the way it is for a long time. It should always be adapting to your needs, and you don't want to get bogged down in some kind of burdensome approval process. So yeah. So again, I just wanted to give an overview of kind of like what we're talking about here when you take the red pill, and then just to give you a few just like I said, nuts and bolts and tools that you can take back to your operation. And yeah.
Thanks, Phil. So that's the context, and you're going to hear a lot of the things that Phil talked about in these two case studies. So I'm going to introduce Hannah, who will present our first case study of systems in action. Hannah Melian is the program director for Food System Enterprise at FarmFresh, Rhode Island. She works in FarmFresh's distribution programs, including Market Mobile and Veggie Box. Hannah has been working at FarmFresh since 2008. She is a native Rhode Islander and Brown University graduate. Hannah?
Great, thank you so much. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about FarmFresh Rhode Island's experience going through the GIP, or Good Handling Practices third-party audit, and how we used standard operating procedures and systematizing to really help our operation. So FarmFresh Rhode Island is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We're founded in 2004-2005, so we've been celebrating our 10-year anniversary this year, which has been very exciting. And our mission is to grow a local food system that values the environment, health, and quality of life of farmers and eaters. This is a new little graphic that we've come up with recently that shares a little bit about our model here at FarmFresh. We do a lot of different activities at our organization, which intersect these two broad spheres. One is called community access, and that's our farmers markets, nutrition education programs, and our work with food stamp incentive programs, amongst other things. And then our other programs are our food system enterprise, or what you more typically find or think of as hub activities. And so those are aggregation and distribution related programs. And so at the intersection of the two, we can really impact farmers and eaters in our state, in our community, in a bigger way. So our main aggregation and distribution program is called Market Mobile. We work with about 70 local farmers and food producers in the Rhode Island, Mass, and Connecticut area. We deliver to over 200 different customers. In our system, some of the important things are that farmers set their prices. Farm name is preserved throughout the supply chain. It's on the order form, on the invoice, and the package. 18% of sales go to support our operations. We have an online order form, and we recently, as of last year, have our USDA GIP certification, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a moment. Our other main program is called Veggie Box. We work with about 75 farmers and deliver CSA-like programs to about 80 different work sites and YMCAs around the state. Last year, the program reached over 1,500 families throughout Rhode Island. Each box costs $25, and we deliver them weekly and bi-weekly, depending on the season. And we send out an e-newsletter full of farm information, recipes, all sorts of information to help people use all the wonderful vegetables in their box. So here's a timeline. I have a lot of text in here, but just a basic broad timeline that kind of talks about the start of our programs and some of our sales. I also put in some information about when we expanded coolers and how many staff we have. And the thing about this slide that was important for me to emphasize was that as programs grow and staff is added, you need more complex systems in order to manage program growth and the additional staff on board. So this year in our office and warehouse, we have 6 full-time staff plus another 2 full-time equivalents, as well as our team of drivers. And that's just a lot more people to coordinate than when we had, say, in 2011, where we probably had closer to 2 or 3 people working on the program. So again, our main distribution program, Market Mobile, started in 2009. Veggie Box started in 2011. And last year we hit over 2 million, and we're hoping to hit 2.35 million in sales for this year. So we approached our journey into systematizing, started with getting third-party audited. So we really used this opportunity to find a way to help us improve and increase the opportunities that our operation had for delivering to institutions, universities and colleges around us, and also looking at it as an opportunity for the farms around us to reach a new marketplace. Our process really helped us to professionalize our operation. I kept talking about it as if we were going to college. Our operation kind of really grew up, and it really created a really great opportunity, this third-party certification, for us to refine our policies and procedures. We found it to be an incredible learning and development opportunity for our staff. It really helped all of us come together and learn. We had to learn a lot of things as we developed these procedures and wrote, and it really helped us to examine our operation and find ways that we can improve. And one of the big things that we've found is that although this was applied specifically to food safety, we have found so many different ways to apply this sort of knowledge and procedure, this process, to different parts of our organization. There's definitely a joke about SOPing, making a standard operating procedure, SOP that. Like, we need an SOP for this and that, and so we've really have had that expand throughout the Food System Enterprise program. So again, the food safety certification that we did was the USDA's Good Handling Practice, or GIP audit. The GIP audit is related to the GAP, or Good Agricultural Practice. The GAP program covers the farm side, and the Good Handling Practices, or GIP audit, covers food handlers. And again, we went for the third-party certification as a way for us to reach a new customer base of institutions. Oftentimes, food service management companies require this third-party audit in order to work with them. And with the oncoming of FSMA in a couple years, or whenever FSMA rolls out, it's great for us to be starting to think about food safety and engaging our producers in that as well. So the standard operating procedure is the main tool that's used in the GIP program to establish food safety procedures. And so the standard operating procedure, or SOP, is really about creating a list of procedures in order to accomplish specific tasks. And so again, as Phil mentioned, they can look a lot of different ways. Most of our SOPs for this have been written with pictures involved depending on the process. So we use SOPs now in a lot of different areas in our operation. Some of the ways that we use them is both for hiring and orientation of our staff, for volunteers and interns. We put together a big intern training SOP this year across the entire organization. It was a really great opportunity for us to bring everyone together and combine everyone's different methods and create a really strong intern orientation program. We use them in a lot of our food safety processes and trainings, and we've also expanded them into our receiving and delivery procedures, which both deal with food safety as well as the non-food safety aspects. How to stock the shelves, how to make sure you have everything from a farm. And then we're working on SOPs in our billing and collection procedure as well, which has been a great process for our cash flow. We have found so many different benefits of creating standard operating procedures across the organization. And one of the top values that I think is that we have created them as a team. So they've really been a shared creation of our staff. And using them for training has been helpful, and then also using them as an opportunity for continuous improvement. So again, like, we need an SOP for that. I just a moment ago had an email with a colleague about creating a standard operating procedure for a specific staff training piece, and I know that creating an SOP for that, in the next couple of days will be really beneficial going forward. We have found this to be a great opportunity to collect information from our staff, particularly from the folks in the warehouse who are, engaging with these processes on a day in and day out, to really get their perspective and have their input in the process of creating this and finding out what people know. And I think getting folks who are having people who are doing the work day in and day out be part of creating the systems is really important for making sure that they're going to be implemented well, and that they're going to be set up in a way that is really going to be helpful. And it's a great opportunity to take a bigger picture and understand what your operation is doing. and find out how all the different pieces. We actually created a whole map of how all of our SOPs link together for us to really understand how all of these processes together create a system. That was incredibly valuable for us. So on the side here, on the left are a couple pictures of our new compliance documents. So now we have binders in our warehouse full of all the different pieces, our warehouse logs, our compliance documents, all of our SOPs. We have these big binders now that have all of our processes in place. So after we went through this process, which is definitely an ongoing process, we've had much clearer processes throughout our operation, how to take temperatures of incoming products, how to pack a pallet, how to load things into the warehouse, what the different roles of the drivers and the driver assistants on the trucks. It's definitely been an opportunity to clarify who's responsible for which pieces of the operation, and then creating monitoring and evaluation of those processes. It's definitely improved our staff training processes with oncoming drivers, and as well as if people are switching around tasks within the team, how to make sure that everything is completed when one task moves from one person to another. Again, we've really been looking at how to expand this standard operating procedures across the organization. You know, we should make an SOP for this and that and that and that. The list, we have a whole list of things we want to make standard operating procedures for. And I've really found it to be a useful method to bring our entire team together to deal with an issue. It feels like these days, you know, we'll all come together to solve a problem, and out of that will come a standard operating procedure which will improve things going forward. So some final thoughts about the process. The process is that it's a process as well as a destination, and so working through that process and approaching it as a journey rather than just a destination is really valuable. So much of the value has come through the process itself of creating that. I think a lot of, depending on what your standard operating procedure is, it requires a lot of upkeep and management. So these are not like a set it and forget it sort of document. We found it really helpful to date our procedures, and I use that term, this is my SOP joke about dating your procedures. It's helpful to know, oh, I made this in you know, May of 2014, but also that you date your procedures in which you find out, you know, is this procedure work for me? Do I like it? Do I want to keep going with it? So to really, as you make processes, to make sure that you like it, we've definitely created a procedure and then found out it didn't work for us, so we'll change it. They're definitely living documents. We found the whole process to be rather time intensive, but definitely very worthwhile. I feel like we have all felt on our team that all the time we've spent working on our food safety procedures has been really a great investment in our operation, in our program, and in our staff. And the more that our staff has been involved in the process, the better the outcome has been. And so that is my contact is here if you have any questions, but I guess that's my summation of our standard operating procedure journey.
Great.
And we're going to keep on making standard operating procedures. It's just been, you know, once you fall down the rabbit hole of standard operating procedures, for the better.
There you go. There you go. And quality and efficiency follows. Thank you, Hannah. That was excellent. So now we're going to turn to Common Market in Philadelphia, really for a very differently motivated take on systematization. So let me introduce Tatiana and Samantha from Common Market. Tatiana is a Philadelphia-based social entrepreneur who works to improve the vitality of rural and urban communities. A graduate of the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School of Business MBA program, she uses her formal training for social good. Tatiana is a co-founder and executive director of the Common Market, a local foods distribution center that connects over 300 schools, hospitals, grocers, and workplaces to sustainable farms in the Mid-Atlantic states. Samantha Shane is a local food operations fellow at Common Market, where she brings her background in community-supported agriculture, institutional food service, urban studies, and social change. She currently works in development and training. When she's not writing for Common Market, she can be found swapping stories about Philadelphia trivia, knitting winter gloves, and hosting dinner parties. Tatiana and Samantha, welcome. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for inviting us to join this webinar. We're so pleased to be here and have already learned so much from Hannah, Phil, and Jeff. So I know a lot of people who are on this call, but for those people who are newcomers, I wanted to introduce myself. My husband, Harley, and I founded Common Market in 2008 because we wanted to change the food environment in our neighborhood, a very low-income neighborhood in Philadelphia. We've now been in business for about 8 years. We are a nonprofit food hub in Philadelphia. We work with about 300 customers. Our focus is on institutions like schools, hospitals, colleges, and workplaces. We source from around 85 growers and vendors, and we've already moved $9 million of good food, which is, it's really amazing to see, you know, how fast that number is growing. Really every month now that number becomes bigger and bigger. We currently employ about 20 staff people. In the early days of Common Market, we started out with only 1 truck and a few employees. Growing made us realize that we needed systems because we kept bumping into obstacles. We were having trouble with staff retention and figured that if staff were going to be coming and going, we really needed a robust training system that we could train up staff really quickly and efficiently. We engaged a consultant, Peggy De Silva from Veritable Vegetable, who many people on this call know. And in this process, working with Peggy, we realized that the problems were really a lot deeper and more structural with the organization. What we really needed was to define the roles for the departments and for individual staff. And then we needed to have training modules to build the skills and knowledge as we brought on new employees. It was really liberating for us to go through this process and to learn that we didn't need to keep training everyone to do everything. A system could help us to be strategic and thorough. In the end, it was a business decision that had to do with our bottom line and also with our employee retention and happiness. So we, working with Peggy, and some of our board members actually, we created an organizational chart that helped us map out all of the different roles and responsibilities that are part of Common Market. Now we have 20 staff now, so it kind of makes sense, but back when we did this, we had maybe 3 people on staff. And so even though we were dividing people into we were dividing the job into departments, there was, 1 person could be responsible for tasks within 2 or 3 different departments. But this really helped us to kind of think through what all of the roles were and to create job descriptions. We had a process in mind, and then we used training to help us implement that process. Now, training is how we maintain our systems and how we communicate to our staff about how their work fits into the big picture. And I'm really struck listening to Hannah's presentation about how similar our training modules are to their SOPs. It seems like a very similar they play a very similar role in communicating the responsibilities and the division of labor to the people who are doing the work. So, we thought that we needed training. What we really needed was systems. This gave us a chance to invest in both, which had a huge positive outcome for the Common Market.
So we wanted to take you through how we think about training at Common Market, and that revolves around focusing on what is concrete: skills, knowledge, and attitude. We have training modules for all kinds of tasks that employees carry out as part of their day-to-day work, which could be placing orders with farmers, packing a skid, or using the floor cleaning machine. But no matter what, we always come back to the same central question: what does an employee need to know how to do in order to succeed at his or her job? This is what our training system looks like. We have competencies for each department or each role, and then we also have separate competencies that apply to our whole entire staff no matter what role they play. Then we have specific modules about topics or skills that the employee might need in his or her job, You'll see that each module focuses on one topic at a time, like our workflow, our routing, or our sales strategy. Zooming out, this is the big picture of how we structure the training system, whether we're onboarding a new staff member or doing maintenance training. Each training program is 2 or 3 weeks long. We have competencies, which are the big parts of an employee's job, like entering sales or packing a skid. And we know that those competencies actually require lots of different skills and understandings. So each competency has a series of modules, which are the hands-on, nitty-gritty trainings and follow-up resources for each topic or skill. They're really detailed, and during the training period, we'll go through the modules and then schedule check-ins to make sure that we're on track and get feedback from the new employee. We celebrate these staff when they finish the program because we want them to be trusted by their colleagues, and we want to recognize the hard work they did in learning our systems. Overall, what we're working on is developing clear expectations between trainers, trainees, and supervisors. This theme brings us back once again to coming up with systems and dividing up roles and responsibilities throughout the organization.
Let's look at how this training system plays out in our organization. We want to look at food safety as an example. So while we are working on our organizational development, that is the division of labor in our organization, we saw that our systems actually transcend each individual department. For example, all of our employees need to know about food safety, our mission, how products get from the farm to the warehouse to the customer. Through training, we can easily disseminate information throughout the organization. We also allocate responsibility throughout the organization and make sure everyone knows their role in keeping food safe. All common market staff receive training in food safety. Then when they are training in their department, they learn about the in-depth roles that they need to fulfill, from completing forms and checklists to taking the temperature of products to working with farmers on post-harvest handling. In this way, food safety and training is intertwined. We all need to work together to perform well on our independent food safety audit, which is actually happening next week.
This process started when we identified a big problem in the organization, low staff retention. The impetus for developing systems was internal. The poor staff retention we had observed was affecting our bottom line, our mission, and our day-to-day operations. To fix this, what we needed to do was develop departments and systems. So we developed core competencies for all of our staff roles. 2 to 3 weeks of formal training became part of onboarding, as well as this recognition system we mentioned. We have a library of more than 50 training modules available. And now we've improved staff retention. We have tried and true systems for our operation. And we have a robust training system so we can continue to grow. We have 20 full-time employees, and we're launching another site. We'll need both strong systems and strong training programs to sustain Common Market. And this goes back to our mission. We want to have a national footprint in order to really impact the supply chain. So we're launching Common Market in Atlanta this year. Having the training system already ready to go allows us to spread the Common Market process and values from operation to movement building. And I think that's where we're going to end.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Learning about the depth and complexity of Common Market's training system is inspiring and almost intimidating a little bit. So thank you for sharing. So now we enter our question and answer section. So please go ahead and type in your questions in the questions box. We have a question from Melissa for you, Hannah. Your hub is GIP certified. Are all your farms GAP certified or GAP trained?
Great, thank you for your question. Not all of our farms are GAP certified. We have quite a number. Most of our larger farms are certified. We're lucky that in the state of Rhode Island we have a cooperative extension runs a state-run GAP program. So we do always lose a few points on our GAP audit on our GIP audit because not all of our farmers are certified. We actually have some customers who only want to buy from GAP certified farms. So we have a version of our software system that only shows the GAP certified farms. But beyond that, we have a number of them that are not.
Okay, great. Phil, is there a good argument to start a business, a food hub or whatever business, with SOPs in place, already written, or does it make more sense to wait until you sort of have established some processes and you're ready for business growth, or you're in the middle of business growth and you sort of realize an immediate need?
Great question. I would say that there is a great argument to start a business with SOPs in place because it kind of already gives you the set of, I guess, guidance as you grow, and then definitely set them up in a way that you can adjust them and adapt them, as needed, as you grow and as you get into that space and realize, oh, hey, this isn't working for me, I should change it this way, or I forgot about something else and let's bring this into our SOPs. But yeah, I think there's a great argument to start with SOPs in place, or at least start the process of developing them as you start your business.
It's really like thinking out the processes is the exercise, and then documenting and then modifying. Hannah and Tatiana and Samantha, you both mentioned several people being involved in the writing of the SOPs. Can you guys give me a sense about how many people were involved, and if there were more than a couple, how was that process coordinated? So Tatiana, Samantha, you want to address that first?
Yeah, sure. So we actually, the first step was actually the division of labor within the organization and defining what the departments were going to be. And then once we had those departments, we brought together the group of people who were either in the department or knew the most about the job of that department to define the outcomes. So it was the outcomes of, if this department was doing their job really well, what are the outcomes that you would see? And so that was it. The first few times, and again, we worked with a consultant, Peggy De Silva, who had previously worked at Veritable Vegetable. And she helped us to lead the first few meetings, and then it became pretty easy, and everybody knew what to expect of those meetings, and yeah, we were able to become pretty efficient at bringing out, everybody being able to think through what exactly the outcomes were, and then the modules, or the SOPs flow pretty clearly from what those outcomes are, and so that there was, in some ways, like there didn't need to be as much inclusion for us in writing the actual modules as that process of including people to think through what the outcomes are for each department.
Okay. Hannah, how did you manage the team process?
Sure. So actually, in a very similar way that Common Market did, in terms of like taking topics and breaking them down. Our departments are maybe a little bit smaller, so we'd identify the person who was in charge, also kind of listening to who was really passionate about different topics. And our team's been working on what I like to call the proposal model, where we'll start a conversation off as a team, and then someone will draft something up as a proposal and then share it back with the group. A lot of these were developed with teams of 2 or 3. So, there'd be a group conversation, someone would develop the first written process, first written draft, use that as a proposal, and then we'd go over it as a team and then kind of test it out and see what works. We also were really lucky to have the assistance of a template of food safety standard operating procedures from Cherry Capital. So that was a huge help. Thank you to Phil and all of your colleagues there, particularly Kelly Lively, who had really helped give us a boost in providing some basic food safety templates.
Well, that's a good segue, Hannah. Terry is asking if it's possible to get templates of your SOPs, actually both companies' SOPs, including the Excel spreadsheet, to have something basically a format to start with. She's not asking for all of your work, just almost basically the outline.
So. Yeah, well, luckily, through the help of the Wallace Center, and I've been collaborating with Jeff, I'm working on developing a tool for preparing for a USDA GIP audit, and so as part of that, there'll be templates of all of the, both the standard operating food safety procedures as well as the monitoring pieces as well. So that should be ready in a few months. But so yes, we are definitely able to share those templates with folks. So it's a, Cherry Capital passed on the favor to us, and we're really happy to be able to pass on that process as well.
Which is very generous. There's a lot of as mentioned, there's a lot of time going into these processes. So to be willing to share is amazing. I'm assuming, Tatiana, that Common Market considers.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Oh yeah. Sorry. Now we can. Yep.
Hello?
Hi, we can hear you.
Our reception is really bad.
Oh, no.
Okay. So actually, our work with Peggy De Silva was funded by the Wallace Center, and so she created a really amazing tool that that's actually to be shared, and we could share that. The talks, it's an explanation of how to develop the outcomes-based job descriptions, how the evaluation plays into the job descriptions, and so yeah, we'd be happy to share that as well.
Excellent, thank you. That's great. Phil, a question for you. Anyone should feel free to weigh in, but it's kind of a theoretical question, which is to say, how much is too much? When does it move from guidance, SOPs, standard operating procedures, to just bureaucracy?
Good question. That's a hard question. For me, too much is more than necessary. Which would be, whatever you need to perform the activity or to perform the task. But sometimes ancillary information can find its way in that is not necessarily relevant, or if something is too descriptive and it kind of almost paints you into a corner. Because remember, when you get audited from a certification standpoint, if you get audited, you're not just audited to your compliance with whatever standard is needed, you're also audited to what the standard you set for yourself is. And so if you say that you're going to clean a restroom between every day between 10 and 2 and you do it at 2:30, then you're out of compliance, even though you're not out of compliance with the standards. So that's kind of how I would approach that.
If I could jump in on answering that question too, I think when a standard operating procedure prevents you from being innovative and coming up with new ideas, that can be a sign, a red flag that maybe you have too many standard operating procedures. I know particularly, and I imagine with many of the other, the panelists here and other folks who are running hubs, so much about this work is about innovating and growing, and things are constantly changing, and so it's really been for us important to look at our standard operating procedures, particularly for non-food safety items, to be dynamic rather than static, and for it to create opportunity for us to have continuous change and improvement. For example, we have a procedure for our pack line and how we pack up our trucks, and we decided to change that a couple weeks ago, and so we had a bunch of team meetings, we came up with some new ideas, we implemented them, decided it didn't work, and then went back to our old standard operating procedure. And I think it was really helpful for us to be able to take that, take another path as a group to say, hey, what if we tried it this way? And we weren't saying, oh no, we have the standard operating procedure, we can't do something different, but looking at it as, they're dynamic and can change, because as we grow and change, our procedures may need to change with us. And so that dynamic piece of it is important.
For sure.
But for certain food safety things, you don't want to change. Like, the dairy should always be under 40 degrees, right? But that probably shouldn't change. But other things like, where the shelf is located and how you put things on the shelf can and should change when necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Phil, do you want to give I don't know if it's possible, but a definition or just to sort of explain the idea of continuous improvement? It was mentioned a couple times, but to me, it's such a freeing and inspiring idea that I wanted to bring it to the fore. So. Sorry to put you on this spot, but
no, that's fine. I do believe there is a whole practice of continuous improvement with some guidelines, some SOPs on how to approach it. But I guess when I think about continuous improvement, I think of that, just like what Hannah's mentioning, where you're able to be procedurally light on your feet and able to adapt to changing needs or changing changing ways you're doing things to meet different needs and to meet different new hurdles or obstacles and stuff like that. So, and to me also, continuous improvement has some kind of measurement component where you can actually, you're keeping track of some whatever you want it to be, whether it's labor hours or something like that, where you can actually measure and then change things and see the effect of your changes. So that's another component of continuous improvement in the way that I think about it.
I'm so sorry, we're having some technical problems, but I can see that there was a question about our graduation ceremony, so I wanted to jump in, and I hope I'm not speaking over somebody. We have a morning operations meeting on Monday with our whole operations team, usually around 10 people. And when we have a new staff who's completed a training program, and if they are in the office on a Monday, then we have a certificate prepared with the signature from their supervisor and an executive director, and our executive director, Tatiana, who's on the line, and we'll give them the certificate in front of everybody so that everybody will know that their training period has not only ended, but that we're confident in their abilities to do their job.
Great. I love that, the combination of the staff pride and then the other staff members recognizing that now there's a new level of expertise. I think it's great. Do either groups have a sense of the number of hours? Hannah, I think you've calculated how long it took for you to starting from Cherry Capital Foods templates and adjusting. I think you have a calculation of about how many hours it took for you to go through the GIP certification.
Yeah, we estimated we think it took me about 40 hours, the whole process over 4 months, to get our whole facility up and running with our food safety plan. So I'm not sure how much of that was the actual SOPs. I think I would say something like maybe 15 or 20, just because, again, a lot of those were really spent in conversations with our team about what's the best way for this process to look and how do we need to update our operation in order to be compliant. But it was, I think one of the best investments of time that we made last year in terms of, helping our operation grow and staff training and development. So it is a lot of time, but very worth it.
Great. Yeah, that's great to hear. So what I started to say before Common Market folks were talking about their awesome graduation ceremony is that I would like a sense of, do I need professional help to get started in this? Or is it okay? I know my business. I'm just going to write down what I know. Phil, do you suggest professional assistance?
I mean, you don't need it, but it is helpful. Especially when some of the not necessarily even just the terms, but just the language, the way that you write out a procedure sometimes might be unfamiliar. So, I mean, definitely if you're trying to approach it and you're trying to take on the task of doing it and you feel overwhelmed and you feel like you're lost, then yeah, definitely seek out some professional help. or even just from a colleague standpoint in our community of practice. So.
Well, it sounds like it's a very time-consuming process, and staff time is money. So sometimes it's hard to justify bringing in a professional, but since this is a time-consuming process, it may make business sense to do it if you save a week or two of time, that sort of thing. Okay. I think we have addressed almost everyone's questions. Yeah, I think we're good. The common market folks they mentioned they're having some technical difficulty, so we are trying to get them reconnected, but if it doesn't work, they wanted to make sure that their thanks was sent out to attendees and for listening, and they were glad that they could share their story, and so are we. Hannah or Phil, did you want to have any closing? We have a couple minutes, so if you wanted to say anything in closing, but no is okay too.
Well, I guess Hannah, if you could. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Okay. Hannah, I had a question about, when you got all of the SOP templates from us at Cherry Capital Foods, can you describe the process of adapting them to your operation? Like, did you use them mostly as is? Were there a lot of changes? Like, how did that look?
Yes, so I think in the beginning, I started by changing where it said Cherry Capital Foods to FarmFresh. I started taking, we started with the basic ones and changing all the names, and then I think by the end they look pretty different. So we first started, I'm like, okay, let's visualize your procedures on our operation. And so we would start reading through and say, no, that doesn't work on ours. This is not how we do it. What if we do it here? We would reword or rephrase things. And I think by the end they were fairly, I'd say about half of it was pretty different. So, there were some things I would read in yours and need to look up and evaluate for us what we needed to do. It was a great stepping stone in many ways for us. I learned so many different terms and procedures and best practices. It was a great scaffolding tool. And yeah, again, in the end, if you compared them side by side, they'd be at least 50% different, I think, or even more. By the end, again, I probably rewrote most of them, but I think had similar overall goals and tones. But definitely had to adopt. Everyone's operation looks a little bit different. So definitely had to adopt a lot of things to meet our needs.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was great.
All right. Well, have you taken the red pill? Are you are you already thinking of systems that you really should be more careful about formalizing? Of course, this was just an introduction, but I hope you now see the great power that systems can have on complicated or expanding businesses. So I want to thank all of our panelists today, Phil, Hannah, Tatiana, Samantha. I really appreciate your sharing your stories and your expertise. This webinar is being recorded, will be archived on our site at ngfn.org/webinars, along with the over 50 other webinars we've done in the past. Actually, we might be up to 60 now. Feel free to send others who you would think would like to have heard this presentation, and take some professional development time yourself and dig through our excellent archives. They are organized by topic in the left-hand navigation area, and this webinar should be up within a few business days. We offer our NGFN webinars on the third Thursday of each month at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time, this month notwithstanding. Sign-up links are at ngfn.org/webinars and will be emailed to you if you get on our mailing list. In August, we will present a simple, valuable tool designed to help you step through making the tough decisions for your business. Could be a farm business, it could be a hub business, really it could be any business. It's like having a consultant with you, helping you step through to find the ideal solution for you. And in September, we're very excited to announce that we will be presenting the results and analysis of the second biennial Food Hub survey by Michigan State University's Center for Regional Food Systems and the NGFN Food Hub collaboration. We were able to collect very in-depth data from about half of the known food hubs in the country, an excellent feat, and I want to be the first to thank all the hubs that took the time to complete the survey. We look at all major pieces of food hubs, including operations, finances, management and other staffing, impacts on farmers and communities, products sold, and on and on. There will be the option to automatically sign up for these webinars in the post-webinar survey. I wanted to mention that the NGFN Food Hub collaboration recently released an excellent complement to the National Food Hub Survey, the Food Hub Benchmarking Study. This goes very deep into the financials of food hubs across the country. As a benchmarking study, it can be used as an effective tool for hubs to understand how their operations compare to others across the country. Food hub investors and lenders can also leverage this solid work to more deeply understand their target market. Called Counting Values, this report is available on the NGFN website, and you can go directly to it by using that URL right there, ngfn.org/hubbench. Agricultural Marketing Service, who has for years maintained a farmers market directory, has added an on-farm market directory, a CSA directory, and a food hub directory. If you or people you work with are involved in any of those activities, please visit USDA localfooddirectories.com and have them enter their information or enter your information. The directories are just another indication of USDA's commitment to local food systems, and our participation encourages their further investment. It doesn't take too long. Enter your information and encourage others to do as well. For food hubs, you can actually go to bit.ly/regmyhub as a shortcut. You can find the NGFN on YouTube, on Twitter, and on our website, ngfn.org. The Wallace Center is on Facebook. Search for Wallace Center at Winrock International. Again, if you haven't already, sign up for our email updates. There's a link on the ngfn.org homepage, or just let us know in our post-webinar survey and we'll sign you up. Please contact us at any time. Email address is contact@ngfn.org. I've gotten a few emails there today already. The NGFN would like to thank you all for your time today. Once again, let me encourage you to fill out the survey that'll open in your web browser in just a moment. We do offer these webinars free to you, but we need to let our funders know about our impact. So thank you very much. This concludes the webinar.